Each day, we live and work in unique personal spheres. Some are familiar or traditional, some surprising and unorthodox. But facing new challenges means that nothing stays the same forever. It's time to stop feeling stuck in our circles and work harder to connect them. Technology makes things faster, easier, and more possible. Automation helps change how we do business, so we don't have to be afraid to embrace change to achieve our goals. It's time to adapt, innovate, and overcome together. It's time to bridge where you are to where you want to go. Are you ready to connect, create, innovate, and automate? AnsibleFest 2020. Automate to connect.
Welcome to our first day of the AnsibleFest virtual experience. I'm Katie Piccirilli, Senior Manager for Product Marketing Ansible Automation here at Red Hat. This is my 7th AnsibleFest, but for many of you, it's your first one. From wherever you are, thank you for joining us. Connecting to learn, network, and gain new perspectives is our main priority. With thousands and thousands of you joining from around the world, there's no shortage of new connections to meet within the expansive Ansible community. As many of us continue to work from home and adjust to our new normal, connections have never been more important. That's why we chose Automate to Connect as the theme for this year's AnsibleFest. AnsibleFest has always been a place to learn and expand your career with new skills in the industry's most sought-after technologies. We hope this year will be no different with talks about Ansible automation with OpenShift and Kubernetes, edge computing, and of course, how to just do more Ansible. I'd like to quickly highlight a few themes that you're going to hear about over the next few days. First, connecting communities. We believe in the power of open source and connecting the growing Ansible community through innovation and change. Today, you will hear from Robin Bergeron, who leads the Ansible community team, and she will walk us through how a connected open source community is a powerful agent for change. Next, you're going to hear about ubiquitous automation. We are announcing a new integration which connects traditional container and edge platforms through automation. This integration connects Ansible Automation Platform and Red Hat OpenShift, the industry-leading Kubernetes platform, making possible a new level of end-to-end automation. This integration leverages the new Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management technology to bridge automation across traditional and cloud-native environments, connecting more teams and more domains than ever before. The newest boardroom imperative is automation. The global crisis has brought automation to the forefront of almost every company's IT strategy. That's why this year, we expanded our IT business track at AnsibleFest. We are focusing on connecting our IT leaders and our automation experts to better align technical implementation to business goals. Now more than ever, automation enthusiasts and early adopters are delivering on ways to help their organizations succeed. Finally, you're going to hear from Richard Henshaw about the value of the Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. Richard Henshaw is our Ansible product manager, and he will go into detail about what's being added to the Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform, such as new hosted services, content collections, and more. In addition to our 2 keynotes today, you will hear from people just like you, solving problems with automation. Our customer spotlights include CarMax, SEPSA, and the Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. You can gain new perspectives by engaging in those live Q&A sessions. You will hear from thought leaders such as Forrester, IDC, and RedMonk. And last but definitely not least, you will not want to miss the demo we have this afternoon with Walter Bentley and team on the Red Hat Ansible Automation Platform. It's time, let's connect.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. My name is Robin Bergeron, and I'm very, very, very truly excited to welcome all of you to this year's AnsibleFest. Whether you're joining us for the first time or if you've attended in the past, it's wonderful to know that you're all out there watching from the office in your home, maybe the makeshift office in your closet or dining room, or maybe even your actual office. Even though I've attended many AnsibleFests in the past, I continue to find it to be one of the most educational and interesting events I've ever been to. I hope you do as well. One of the most exciting things about AnsibleFest for me this year is our theme, which Katie shared in her opening remarks, Automate to Connect. As a community architect and as a manager of the Ansible community team, facilitating connections that enable our community is the most important thing we do every day. And scaling what we can all accomplish together has become incredibly important as Ansible has become one of the most active open source projects in the world. There's no better example of understanding just the growth and the scale of the Ansible community than seeing just how many of you we were able to connect with today at our very first virtual Ansible Fest. With tens of thousands of folks attending over the course of our time together, and even more on their own schedules, we're now actually able to connect with more members of our community than we ever have before. And this statement, we are all the community, continues to be as true as ever for Ansible. I truly believe that every connection counts. I really believe that each and every one of us has the ability to participate in the Ansible community in countless ways, whether it's through code, whether it's through sharing with your friends or coworkers, or helping others all over the world. And no matter how big we become as a community, we want to make sure that those connections and your sense of being part of this community to be as alive and as full of potential as it always has been. And we want that because that very potential and taking advantage of all of those connections and opportunities is what enables innovation to happen. And we see that innovation happening in Ansible every single day. We all know that open source communities have produced some of the most innovative and most popular software that exists today. But being a community doesn't just come simply by the virtue of being open source, right? And neither does innovation. Growing a community requires frameworks that enable these connections to exist, right? Between developers and users, code and tools. And when you're able to combine those frameworks with opportunities and ideas, that's where innovation can actually flourish. And that's the place where the benefits of open source truly shine. And in Ansible, from the very beginning, we strive to ensure that all of those frameworks and ingredients for a successful project were present. We made it easy to learn and get started with. We made sure it was at least minimally useful and that it could grow over time. And we built the tool itself with a modular plug-in architecture that would make it easy to contribute to. In turn, all of those contributions enabled Ansible to become even more useful, connecting and automating even more technologies, which then made it useful to even more people. And this is really open source innovation at its finest, right? Thousands of users and contributors working together, developing feedback loops, all going to build software that everybody loves. But doing it well and having some good fortune and timing along the way has also meant that we've gotten fairly large and incredibly active as a community. To put this level of scale in more relatable terms that we probably understand since we've all been on a video call lately, imagine that you've made something and you would like to get feedback about the thing that you've made. So you invite 100 people to your video call and you want all of them to provide feedback because you want that feedback, you need the feedback because you want to act on the feedback. Are you actually going to get that feedback in the phone call? Will the folks that you invited truly feel like they were heard? Or will you spend the whole call saying, I'm sorry, are you trying to talk? Are you on mute? Could you unmute yourself? No, not you, the other person, you. Can you try again? Thanks. For us in Ansible, we want to make sure that every voice counts. Every contribution matters. Every single bug reported, every improvement to usability, every question answered, every work for me emoji really does count. Over its history, Ansible has had more than 13,000 individual voices speak at least once, and many of those individuals have done so hundreds and some even thousands of times. And for every single connection that an individual makes, multiple automated processes and communications occur, fanning out to even more members of our community. And for end users, while we know that adding new ways to automate with Ansible increases its usefulness, we've heard that particularly as folks get more experienced, that they'd like to be more selective and flexible in what they choose, rather than having all 6,800 modules included for them. The collections concept is the innovative answer to improving our contributor process and the end user experience and ensuring they'll both scale in smarter ways as we move into the future. And it's really the result of more than a year of work. In a nutshell, collections are a new way to make use of the content that you connect to Ansible, modules, and even roles, and do so in more dynamic and flexible ways. There's a couple of things that really excite me about collections. So number one, it's easier to contribute to, right? Collections can live in their own individual repositories, which for the Ansible community makes it a lot easier for folks to find and connect with the content that they care about and connect with the users and contributors to that more human-scaled community. The second thing is for users, it's now easier to easier than ever to use Ansible in all the ways that you want to or need to. Since collections can be packaged and made available on their own schedules, you can update them or upgrade them as frequently or as infrequently as you'd like. Or you can upgrade a more minimal Ansible installation without updating your collection. Now, I know what you're all saying. What do we want? Collections! When do we want it? Yesterday! Oh! Well, behold, I am super proud to, re-announce the release of Ansible 2.10, which arrived in late September. And yes, the collections curated by the Ansible community for inclusion in Ansible are in 2.10. The amazing thing about this release is really the amount of coordination among so many points of connection, right? We required changes to our build and release processes, extraordinary amounts of work being done under the hood, and it was a significant part of our feedback loop as well as we finished the work on the collections concept. But the important thing about 2.10 is this. As an upstream community that continually develops new technologies, we really see collections as a significant part of the future of Ansible. So getting early feedback on your experiences in using collections is incredibly important to our community. 2.10 is the first release where we're actually able to start broadly gathering that information. And as a part of the process, we can hear your feedback a lot better as well now. Now, we all know that this year has been interesting for all of us. Right here, I have the 2020 dumpster fire. Yes, it's been the best. We've all had to adapt and change in lots of ways, right? At home, at work, in public, and at school, and in the communities that we love. I always like to remind people that contributing code is not the only way to contribute or participate in a community. Our Ansible meetup communities have been growing in size and membership over the past number of years. We now have more than 260 groups all over the world, still looking for that one in Antarctica, self-organizing and creating Ansible content to share in their local communities. This is really an aspect of the Ansible community that I've always loved, that so many humans recognize how sharing information in their own local areas, collaborating together to teach each other new things, helps to improve their own communities for the better. But this year, they've also reminded me that humans are incredibly resilient, right? We bounce back from life-altering situations. We bounce back from, we adapt to new situations, and we always form new connections and points of collaboration along the way. A ton of these groups, still wanting to share all of their experiences and teach each other together, pivoted their meetup groups in a variety of ways. Since March, there have been more than 54 virtual Ansible meetups all over the world. And all those organizers are starting to see the patterns that connect local and not so local meetup members in the best ways, whether that's by common language, time zone, country rather than a city. They're all coming together and adapting as best as they can, given the year. But for me personally, one of the most important lessons that I draw from as a community person over and over again is that connecting contributors to opportunities isn't necessarily about deciding what I think should be available as opportunities. It's about making the short doors open for anyone to create those connections and opportunities that nobody had yet started. This year in Ansible, we've seen this in action with the creation of a diversity and inclusion working group, which meets regularly to explore all the ways in which we can improve and do outreach and be more inclusive. And the group was also key in our project's work to improve the inclusiveness of our code and language itself, which began many months ago. I can honestly say that all of these activities, initiated by all the passionate folks in the Ansible community, are things that make me so proud to call Ansible my home, and it really does make me proud to see how much we're maturing as a community. In my role, I've had the privilege of, being able to meet and chat with Ansible users all over the world, sometimes in person, sometimes on the internet. One of the discussions I had a few years ago was with someone who was a systems administrator, which was a job that I had numerous years ago. So lots of empathy. It was the 90s for me, but anyway, chatted with him and he told me how much he loves Ansible, how it was finally a tool that he could get started with and be productive with, and felt good about it very quickly. He was able to start solving problems, and he told me about all the things that he had accomplished and had been able to change things for the better for himself at work, for his coworkers, and they were actually finally getting ahead. I asked how long they'd been using Ansible, and he said, well, it's been about a year. But then he also said this, a year ago, I wasn't really sure that I could go on at my job. There was so much to do. I was, fighting fires. I was on call constantly. Nothing ever ended. I was deep underwater. And I was missing out on my family and their lives, all of their milestones. And he said, this year I actually got to go to my daughter's 5th birthday, which he had missed her 4th birthday the year before because he was at work fighting fires. And he said, Ansible has changed my life. I can see my kids again, like on the weekends and, like a normal person should. And, hearing stories like that, that's stuff that makes me very proud and, humbled to be in this community. And one of the main reasons why I go to work every single day and feel great about what I do. And those stories aren't really all that uncommon. It's really our shared love of automation, all of our shared embrace of this universal language and tool that we call Ansible that has helped so many people to improve their personal lives, their work lives, their careers, the world they're in, the world for all of us. And it really truly does connect us in so many amazing ways. It's not just shared code, it's a shared passion, and that kind of connection is something that can change our own worlds or the world for all of us. If you're attending AnsibleFest live this week, I hope you'll take time to connect with others in the event platform, to meet all of the other automation users in your community, our experts, ask questions, or share your own experiences. And I hope to bump into you too on the internet and hear your stories about your own connections to automation and the Ansible community. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy the event.
Welcome. My name is Richard Henshaw. I'm the Senior Manager for Product Management for Ansible Automation Platform. Think to yourself, how did you adapt to the changes this year? How was your team forced to adapt? And were you prepared, and had you been automating already? Talking for the Ansible team, we're ready to move forward, and I would suspect that sentiment is shared by many of us here. We've just had a good lesson in why being able to adapt and quickly is so important. The previous ways of working may not always be available to us, and we have to change the way we focus and look at things. And this is why I have such a strong belief in the power that automation can gift us. And if we remind ourselves of what the goal of automation is, and to put it very simply, to perform work with minimal human interaction, I mean, on one hand, this sounds great, no work, but it can also seem very impersonal. And the reality is automation cannot be achieved without knowledge and experience, because what needs to be automated is what we learn. So much of what we do is specific to our circumstances, to our business, or our own personal backgrounds. So how we approach automation is also important. And that's why this year's message, Automate to Connect, is relevant to the times we find ourselves in. As a rhetorical question, and of course, all of these are rhetorical questions, I'm sat in a room at my house, staring at a camera. I would next ask you why we need to connect. And what do we connect for? Do we connect to share knowledge, to learn from others, to work on common goals and objectives? The reality is it should be all of these. Any intent when we connect from a work perspective needs to be about collaboration. Collaboration is essential when we approach how we deal with change. Because when we talk about change, we often see it explained as people, process, and technology. But when we're forced to change to unexpected circumstances, you can't always be prepared. You're not always given the time to plan and prepare the way you'd like. So having a way to connect, to build relationships, and to collaborate is more important than ever. Back in the days when I was learning my trade in middleware engineering, before the endless video calls, presentations, and spreadsheets, the most difficult relationship to improve was between us in engineering and the network team. And it wasn't because of the skills. It wasn't because we didn't like each other. At least I'd like to think so. And it wasn't for a lack of trying. It's because the network team, who were on a different floor, the big security door, magnetic locks, special key cards that you needed to have access for, that was aggressively protected so they couldn't be interfered with. There just wasn't this opportunity to build the relationships in the same way that we could when we could go and collaborate with the Linux, Windows, or storage teams. You couldn't wander over and discuss a problem, just have a chat. They were locked away. Now, maybe they liked that. And sometimes it's good to be locked away, but it forms a barrier. And it's a barrier to collaboration. And so with this group, collaboration required meetings. It required planning. And this made it harder. And when something's hard, it makes it easier not to do it. And additionally, we didn't have a platform to help us. So ask yourself, does that sound familiar to your circumstance? What we needed to connect those relationships, and we've seen this time and time again, is that for automation, we need a consistent technology foundation to connect. We need a foundation that encourages simplicity for collaboration, a foundation to connect the people, process, and technology, and a foundation to help us build trust in those relationships. If we'd had that foundation, that platform, we could have been successful much faster. Because it's important we understand that success depends on trust between groups. To be successful in adapting to change, we need to know we trust when the situation may not be perfect. It might be different offices, could be different countries, probably different languages, maybe even different objectives between these different groups. It might be a global pandemic, which is a phrase I never thought I would say in a keynote. But connecting with your colleagues, collaborating and therefore participating in the work that's done, working as a wider team, it enables you to see a broader perspective. Because how else do we trust unless we understand each other? How do we trust what we can create? Who has created it? Is it up to standard? And how do we trust what's running where? And who's been running it? That we can scale with the correct control. And how do we trust that we can engage, removing friction and complexity? And we can do all these things by being given the opportunity to participate, to be included in the overall process. Ultimately, how do we participate to achieve our goals? And what goals do we choose? Your goals are your business challenges. Automate what makes both your business and IT successful, because participation is key to that process. And the more people you can bring together to connect, the more benefit you can achieve. If we've connected and collaborated, we trust what's being produced. Because automation can be a selfish act. I, the individual, do something to make my job easier. But you should think of automation as a gift of knowledge and experience. How can you automate your job to make your colleagues' lives easier? So if we assume and know that participation enables collaboration, how do we help you to collaborate? Well, with Ansible, the language of collaboration. And to collaborate, we need to connect. And for that, we have the Ansible Automation Platform. Everything I've described so far is drawn from our collective experience with customers. When Ansible, the tool, was released, it started as a way to perform automation in a simpler way. As your needs changed, we added more domains, and then your needs changed again. As complexity and scale surfaced, a different set of challenges for us to look after. Not only did you do the automation, you need to do more automation as you achieve some successes. And afterwards, you have to manage all that automation. To be successful, we've observed that it's not just what you do, it's how and where you do it. It's not just about the tool, it's about the structure, the framework, a focal point and a user experience in maintaining your automation assets. And this is why we've focused all of our product offerings into the Ansible Automation Platform, our single offering for enterprise-grade automation. We've supported your changes in the past, and we've been working to support your changes for the future to help you adapt and connect. Now, if Ansible is the language of collaboration, collections, Ansible content collections, are the building blocks of how you simplify the connection of your trusted technologies. Last year, we launched collections as a way to improve the management of content distributed within the Ansible project and the Ansible products. The teams involved were busy working on making this happen over the last 12 months, working with our community and partners to migrate over 4,500 modules. This work concluded in the summer with the Ansible Collections 1.0 release. Last AnsibleFest, we unveiled certified platforms with the Ansible Certified Partner Program, end-to-end support for Ansible content between Red Hat and our trusted partners. We now have over 50 certified platforms focused around curated enterprise technology domains, the platforms that you use and rely upon, because connecting these domains is connecting your teams. And talking about connecting teams, I'm sure that you're all planning, have started, or already working on cloud-native adoption. Key to that cloud-native journey and story are containers, and that brings its own set of changes to the way that we work. And we want to support you as you adapt to these changes. I'll assume most of you are aware that OpenShift is Red Hat's industry-leading container orchestration platform based on Kubernetes. And I'd like to announce the release of certified Ansible content collections of Red Hat OpenShift, whether it be for augmenting provisioning, customizing cluster nodes, or data operations. Collections gives us the perfect opportunity to deliver these use cases and more. Because we know Red Hat customers have chosen and trust Ansible Automation and OpenShift platforms to drive transformation programs, but the connection between these two platforms and the teams that deliver these has always been their implementation effort. We know that we need to move away from that implementation effort and move to product integration. The reality of evolving tech is it's never all or nothing. If you're fortunate, you can deploy your cloud-native application entirely on OpenShift. But what happens when you need to manage across clusters or access existing infrastructure like networks or databases? We're excited to bridge traditional, container, and edge through Ansible Automation. Perhaps the only automation and container platform solution that is truly agnostic. Ansible just doesn't care whose platform you're running on. The new Ansible Resource Operator, which will be deployed as part of Red Hat Advanced Cluster Management, is our answer. We're making the Ansible Automation Platform a first-class provider inside ACM to enable call-outs to automation assets deployed on the Ansible Automation Platform and to be made easily accessible to container management workflows and connect two industry-leading technology platforms. Enabling this integration will allow customers to identify and enforce policies, apply governance models consistently across multiple clusters, and to deploy and scale complex applications across hybrid multi-cluster environments. In the future, the Resource Operator will be available for any OpenShift deployed service to integrate to the Ansible Automation Platform. And to find out more about this, be sure to check out Matt Jones's Future of Ansible Automation talk, as well as the ACM breakout sessions. Now, if collections are about connecting technology and product integrations are about connecting process, we still need to think about connecting people. How do we ensure that users can find trusted content? So while many users are happy to get content from Ansible Galaxy, we know that many enterprises are far less comfortable with that situation. and certainly not comfortable uploading privately developed content themselves. We also know that Galaxy isn't the only source of content for you to use. There are other source control repositories, other locations, perhaps even file shares, where you allow your teams to collaborate and connect. With all these different sources, it can be hard for your users, your internal communities, to connect and trust they're using approved content. So if we want to connect teams, help them collaborate, have shared goals, and ensure trust in how they automate, we need to fill that gap. And that's why last year we launched Automation Hub on cloud.redhat.com as a trusted source for downstream, certified Ansible content supported as part of your Ansible Automation Platform subscription. And this is where you access the collections for those 50 certified platforms I mentioned earlier. But that was only part one of the plan. So while we can provide a location for trusted content that doesn't bring together content from other sources, before, I mentioned collections were introduced to help the management of automation content. By adopting collections, you provide a path for automation developers to bring content together in a common location, allowing multiple teams to increase their time to value in their automation adoption journeys. But to connect internal communities of practice, we need to provide a focal point for all things related to automation content. And that's why we're pleased to announce that the private version of Automation Hub will be released as the content and knowledge management component of the Ansible Automation Platform, your privately hosted location for all your Ansible content to allow you to curate which content is available from which sources, whether it's from Red Hat, the Ansible community, or developed internally. You now have the control over which content you trust. Finally, this year we launched our third hosted service at no additional cost to platform customers, the Automation Services Catalog. The purpose of this service was to allow you to connect your business users with rules-based governance and a simplified user experience to the automation created and deployed via the platform. We're announcing a tech preview launch of the connected technology to securely connect to your on-prem platform environments. It's based on a technology that's part of our future plans. And again, if you attend Matt Jones's Future of Ansible Automation talk, you'll hear more about what we're planning in this area. Because this year has been somewhat challenging, automation and Ansible have become more important to many individuals and organizations. So I could leave you with one set of thoughts. To adapt to changes we face, keep things simple. Participate in making automation happen and understand the problems to be solved, but always try and keep it simple. Evolve and scale as you connect your teams. As you grow and expand your automation, grow and expand the scale you're working at as you move forward. And collaborate to break down the silos and domains that build your automation that makes change possible. Whether you're an Ansible expert or someone looking for somewhere to start, we have sessions we hope will inspire you to make your own changes and sessions that will give you the knowledge of how to adapt for the future. Thank you and happy automating.